Today we're talking about the DI box. Okay, so this is an input device that allows instruments, which by that I mean guitars, electric guitars, acoustic electric guitars, basses and keyboards to be plugged into a balanced microphone input, but without using a microphone. So a DI box does this by converting unbalanced signal from like a TS cable into a balanced signal like an XLR cable. It changes a high impedance signal into a low impedance signal. It changes a TS connection to an XLR connection and instrument level signal into microphone level signal. So that's 4 different jobs that are all happening at once, and they're all what is required to convince a mixing desk or an interface that instead of a microphone, or to make it convince it that it is receiving a microphone signal rather than just a straight up instrument signal. So there are active and passive DI boxes. So active means that it needs a battery, such in this case it needs a 9-volt battery, or it needs phantom power coming from a desk. And active ones like this one are definitely far more common. Passive ones use a transformer, which is pretty expensive to build. So the link feature here is what we use to run the normal signal that's coming in back out of the DI box so that that can run into an amplifier. So also what you can see on here is an XLR input. This is sort of for really low quality microphones that might not actually run a balanced signal but then need to be boosted so they can carry along the whole way to the desk to go over a long distance. Very rarely does this get used. I've used it maybe once in my career. So the input, where you plug a guitar in, the link, which goes out to an amplifier, and then the output, which runs to the desk via XLR. So I'm just going to connect this up to give you an idea of how this all works. So we'd sit this on the stage or on top of an amp, and we would run our guitar into the input there, and that's connected to the guitar's output. And remember, it could be a guitar, it could be a bass, it could be an acoustic electric guitar, it could be a keyboard. With this one here, we're going to connect the link, and then this one is going to go connect to the amp. So the amp is expecting this sort of instrument level TS signal, so this just sends that same normal signal out. And then you can use the amp to monitor the sound on stage, or if you're using a crazy sound on the amp and you want a clean sound coming through as well, this is how we achieve that. For the output, XLR plugs in there, and then this end of the XLR is heading for the desk. Okay, so I mentioned before that you can use it to blend clean sounds and crazy sounds. So for example, you might have a really distorted bass sound, which is becoming pretty common in a lot of different styles, but that might be missing a lot of the low end. So to keep that intact, sometimes people will use a DI, so the bass guitar comes in, goes straight to the desk, and it goes through unaffected, and then this goes to an amplifier where it's getting distorted and made to sound really interesting, and then the microphone goes in front of that, and then that runs to the desk. And then in the desk we blend those 2 signals together to get the biggest sound possible. So in a recording situation, that's a really cool trick, and it gives you lots of options. Guitars, you don't see that so much. More often what you'd see would be an acoustic guitar signal going in, or possibly you'd run into an interface and then to the computer, and then you'd maybe use some effects inside the computer. So lots of reasons to use a DI box. We also have this one here, which is actually 2 in 1, and this would be great for using with a keyboard where you have the left and right outputs, and then you're running completely in stereo. That's the whole thing. It's a DI box, a really, really useful tool. Another advantage it has over a microphone is that you are completely avoiding feedback loops, and you don't get bleed from other instruments coming into the microphone.